Hillary has been lengthening her excuses as to why she lost the election. She didn't really lose the election. It was stolen from her by, I think it's up to 24 different excuses she has now. Number 24 is content farms in Macedonia. And as I said, my grandfather was a Macedonian content farmer, and we often think about, gathering on the porch and recalling the old days on the Macedonian he never thought that the old content farmers he left behind in Macedonia would one day steal the U.S. presidential election. They are gnarled, hard-working Macedonian peasants, and the way they were able to reach out...
Macedonia continues its decline. As Zoran Zaev of the Cvetin party scrambles to stay in power and protect and expand his wealth, he plans on giving his partner, Ali Ahmeti of Dewey, anything he wants. And what Ahmeti wants is a great deal. In addition to having an ethnic Albanian as prime minister, at least for the first year according to sources, Ahmeti is demanding that his party and an ethnic Albanian control the powerful Ministry of Interior, the tax authority, and the central bank. All of this has long-term negative consequences for Macedonia and for the Macedonians. We'll discuss all this and more on this episode of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. I'm Jason Miko, coming to you from the foot of the Catalina Mountains in Oro Valley, Arizona.
This is Cvetin Shlimanov calling in from the foot of the Vodna Mountains in Skopje Valley in Macedonia.
Very good. All right. Well, this week, let's see, we're recording this on Sunday, the 16th, episode 83 of Macedonian Content
Farmers Podcast. I have lost count
Podcast.
of months, years, days.
Well, this is Sunday the 16th, so this past week...
It feels like summer outside.
Oh, really? Okay.
I can vaguely tell it's summer, but it's probably summer, yeah.
Okay.
That's as precise as I can get.
There you go. Well, this week, Stevo Pendarovski, the president of Macedonia, gave a mandate to form a government to Zoran Zaev of Cvetin, even though he did not actually have the 61 votes needed. He was in talks with Dewey, and there were various rumors coming out about whether or not they had a deal or not. Probably do.
Yeah.
And so that pissed off Vomero because basically it violated protocol, if not the law. I'm not sure on that one. But anyway, so Zaev and Ali Ahmeti are talking this week, and their people are talking. And of course, as I mentioned in the opening monologue, the latest that's come out is that it looks like Dewey will have their ethnic Albanian prime minister for one of the 4 years, assuming this deal lasts for 4 years, and then Zaev would be prime minister for the other 3 years. Of course, the question is who goes first, and sources do say that Ahmeti would demand that his guy, Nasser Ziberi, go first as the prime minister. Plus, they want the control of the Ministry of Interior, the tax authority, and the central bank, which would allow them then to print new money, which of course has to be under the deal with Greece. There has to be new coins and notes printed that say North. But might as well, if you're reprinting the money and reminting the coins, you might as well put the ethnic Albanian language on there, the Albanian language as well, according to sources.
They'll definitely do that, yeah.
So, plus of course, Dewey, the Albanians getting the Ministry of Interior, and at the same time, I see that Dewey is attacking the other Albanian parties, accusing them of interference and all things Albanian, blah blah blah. So, kind of expand on that, why don't you, Sutton, and tell us what else is going on there with that supposed deal.
Yeah, Pendarovski had the ceremony to hand over the mandate. That's usually a big deal because it looks nice in the mountainside offices of President Pendarovski, and it's an important source of legitimacy for the candidate. Although this time we've never, since the first Gruevski term, we haven't had a candidate receive the mandate with such a low mandate, with so few votes in parliament, just 42 for Zaev's SDSM party proper, and 4 others pledged from the BESA party, 46 in total. So it's a very weakened position for Zaev, but he was given the mandate, and then VMRO staged a protest march of their entire group of parliament to Pendarovsky's office, because they have 42 seats in parliament, or 44. 44. Out of them, most of them belong to VMRO, far more than, both in VMRO and SDSM, both parties have other smaller appendage parties, but SDSM has much more of these. So VMRO has more seats in net seats in parliament. So they went to see Pendarovsky to demand he explain why he gave Zaev the first chance at forming a government. VMRO is disputing the clause in the constitution which says you give this to a candidate of a party or parties which have majority in parliament. Zaev has only plurality, but it has been done before.
Okay.
I mean, even when Gruevski would win with, there was once when he won with 60 or 59 seats, he was given the mandate without, he had a pretty certain, pretty solid idea he'll be forming a government with Dewey, but, he was still technically below 61. So, not to mention 2016, when Ivanov gave Gruevski the mandate with 51, 52 seats. So it happened before, but VMRO are pointing to the fact that Pendarovsky himself, as a candidate, said that he will not give the mandate to a leader of a party unless he gives him written confirmation that he has 61 votes. Zaev does not have this. He's just using the mandate as leverage for negotiations. He's negotiating with Dewey. SDSM and Dewey are trying to put on a happy face and say that the talks are doing well. Together they would have 61 vote, which is the bare minimum. And then Minduhtachi, God bless him, he's also offering his seat. So that would make it 62, but it's a very narrow majority. Any member of Dewey or even of Zaev's own party and smaller coalition partners could blackmail him and say, well, I'm crossing over, unless you pay me so-and-so, considering the practice of Zaev buying votes in the previous parliament. So everybody is getting, having a growing appetite now.
Right. Well, and then, so the rumors about Ali Ahmeti demanding, of course, obviously the prime minister for the first year of their 4 years, plus the interior ministry, plus the tax authority, plus the central bank. Those are all pretty solid rumors.
Well, I mean, some of it's out there by, in one instance it was published by Kanal Pet TV.
Yeah.
And Kanal Pet, they're so mercurial, their owner, Boris Stoimenov, it was set up as a pro-VMRO TV station. Then he tried to bring down the first VMRO government, switching with SDSM. Then he got back to VMRO, so then he's back with SDSM. You can't even count the numbers of times he switched sides. So he is currently in some trouble. He's accusing the SDSM authorities of trying to blackmail him for €1 million, totally plausible, to allow him to build a hotel in Skopje, in downtown Skopje. So he published this, one of the most quoted rumors that Zaev caved and accepted that an Albanian will be prime minister. So it could just be, a case of Boris Stoimenov getting angry at Zaev and saying, okay, I'm going to sour your negotiations with Dewey, because if it's out there that he caved, then, it makes it more likely that Ahmeti will push even harder. Maybe there was no deal on this issue yet, but once it's out in a fairly, well-watched TV station like Kanal Pet, it makes Zaev weaker and Ahmeti stronger, so it could just be tactically deployed fake news to affect the negotiations. And listen, it's still possible that these 20 days, the people are betting that it's probably agreed that Zaev will make major concessions and get the DUI votes, but it's still possible that it falls through. I mean, Ahmeti currently seems very interested in building up his nationalist credentials, even going in the opposition for a brief while, and just so he could insist that he secured an Albanian prime minister, or that he wouldn't accept anything less than a 4-year term, full term for an Albanian prime minister. It could still collapse. I mean, he could humiliate Zaev. Zaev would then still have to. So if Zaev fails in 20 days, the mandate lasts for 20 days, then the mandate goes back to Pendarovsky, and then Pendarovsky gives it again to somebody else. So he could then again give it to Zaev. Once he already gave it to him without much of a guarantee, he could do it again. Or some other candidate from SDSM. But then Zaev would be weakened and maybe even more desperate for a deal. So maybe from Ahmeti's point of view, it could be well worthwhile to humiliate Zaev for 20 days and then see what happens when he comes for the second time around. or even, go for the grand coalition scheme I've been talking for a few times already. VMRO SDSM coalition, under which Ahmeti is out and builds up his reputation, his nationalist credential, allows the other Albanian parties to get stuck in some corruption schemes, so he can play on a more equal footing with them, while on the other hand VMRO is entangled in accepting the name North Macedonia, which the internationals were very interested in at the time. Not sure if they're still.
Right. A couple of things on the issue of perhaps that Zaev has caved and whatnot. Of course, he has a well-known history of caving and giving in to whoever wants whatever so that he can stay in power forever. So I think that's a very plausible possibility that he has already agreed and that Ali Ahmeti is going to get whatever he wants. I can't see Ali Ahmeti willingly going into opposition. You say maybe to build up his nationalist credentials and whatnot, but I think from a psychological standpoint, I don't want to psychoanalyze the guy because he's obviously he's a terrorist. So, but I don't think he would survive psychologically in opposition very long. He would wither away or go mad or something. So, yeah, I guess yeah. So you mentioned the 20-day mandate. Pendarovsky gave it to Zaev on the 14th, I believe, last Friday. So what we're looking at around September 4th or 5th is about 20 days. So and you make some good points there with Stoimenov and all those, the intrigue and the Byzantine back and forth that the Balkans are well known for on that. But let's just say for now that this is going to happen, that there's going to be this coalition, that Nasser Zaberi will be the prime minister for the first year, that Dewey will get the Ministry of Interior, Tax Authority, Central Bank. All of this, of course, as I said in the opening monologue, is bad for Macedonia and Macedonians. And of course, under that scenario, I don't believe that their coalition would last for 4 years. Maybe, and we have local elections coming up a year from September, I think. So there's a possibility that it could all fall apart by then, and you could have another election. Or, going back to your point on the Grand Coalition, which I don't see VMRO doing, but personally, I think you should just have another election. Just do it over and over and over again until you get it right. But we have the ongoing issue of the coronavirus to deal with. And now there are hints of new restrictions, new lockdowns, new curfews. The health minister, Filipje, came out and talked about that. What else did he have to say about that? And then let's talk about schools after that.
I mean, the numbers are actually getting slightly better, just very slightly. we're not in the post-Ramadan, Muslim fasting period when, the virus completely went out of control. But people are still dying in serious numbers, like 5 today, 4 yesterday. And the number of active cases is about 3,000. It used to be almost up to 5, I think. Now it's 3, so that has declined somewhat. But the deaths are still pretty frequent, and the borders are all closed there. It's actually even getting worse. I think Serbia introduced border checks now. They demand the swabbing thing. I'm not sure what we did with Kosovo. We started sending all these Kosovo immigrants who live in Finland, so they fly through Skopje and go to Finland, and we sent several plane loads of corona patients to some small budget airport in Finland, and now the poor Finns have to reintroduce their quarantine because of all the Kosovar cases coming to them via Macedonia, so it's pretty bad. But I was surprised when Filip just said that he would restore movement restrictions, he would restore bans on restaurants, what little of the economy was reopened, he now wants to close it back. Lately, he has been very hawkish on both this and on the schools. We all expected that the schools would be opened. Now, Healthcare Minister Filipčak, who still has some authority on the issue despite mishandling the whole thing so badly, he says that the schools must not open, that there should be online learning. So this is just, a cynical person like me would say, well, they had their low turnout election. 200,000 people didn't vote.
Right.
Zaev was able to bribe just enough voters to support him in a low turnout election to, fight VMRO to a draw. If 200,000 more people voted, which would be normal, the normal state of affairs in the country, probably Zaev would not have had enough money to bribe enough people to support him, so he would have probably lost. As you said, we should have a normal, proper turnout elections, but that's unlikely to happen. The U.S. Embassy was cheerleading for a corona election, a low turnout election. So I guess they got the outcome they wanted, and now the government wants to go back to restrictions. I don't know how it helps them.
Right.
I mean, I don't think they're so concerned about the public, the healthcare situation, because they pushed us into elections. It would devastate the economy even further, maybe hoping it would prevent some kind of protests. But so far we've seen that, there were very few. Maybe they feared that VMRO would try to stage protests after the creation of a new SDSM DUI coalition with all the concessions we've been discussing. So blocking the country, reimposing curfews might help SDSM sail through the first few months of the coalition, which would very quickly have. I mean, there will be no more Mr. Nice Guy with the Greeks and the Bulgarians. I mean, now, once Zaev is reappointed prime minister, they would have no more reason to procrastinate with all the demands they have from Macedonia. And they would quickly move to ask for changes in the history books, declare Goca Delchev as a Bulgarian, adopt a new name for the nationality. Instead of Macedonians, say North Macedonians. All the things that they couldn't ask for before because Zaev would have been destroyed in the elections, they can ask for now. So, maybe they're predicting a combination of political unrest, foreign demands for concessions, economic blows, and that's why they might be thinking about this.
Wow, that's even more of a more crushing morosity than I thought possible. But that's a pretty dark scene. But you mentioned there of course, a collapsing economy, with new restrictions and curfews and things, collapsing economy even more. The schools, kids aren't going to get educated. I know that Zaev and Ahmeti actually don't care about the education of Macedonia's children, but it would drag another generation even further behind. You mentioned the restrictions of traveling outside of Of course, Macedonians are. I mean, frankly, I believe that to be, for Macedonians to have to vacation within Macedonia is frankly a good thing, despite the coronavirus and having to travel around and see your own country. But I know that Macedonians like to visit Aegean Macedonia and other places as well. Of course, the Greek economy depends almost 20% of the Greek economy, I believe, is based on tourism, and it's not just Macedonians that aren't coming there. It's other. You're all over Europe, of course. Restrictions are being imposed again because the coronavirus is proving to be. It's not seasonal. The summer didn't do anything for it, etc. So there's that. But what you mentioned about the government perhaps instituting new curfews and restrictions and anything like that. Of course, I was hoping to come there in the fall.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to be there for our elections, which are November 3rd, because I remember the 2000 elections quite well here, and I was living in Macedonia at the time, and of course the fiasco with the hanging chads and whatnot. So I was thinking I'd like to be back in Macedonia for the 2020 elections because we're going to have the same type of thing there. Plus,
then you'll be able to claim asylum in Macedonia.
Yeah, exactly.
To
Plus,
avoid the civil war in the U.S.
Well, yeah, that could be part of it. I wanted to come and visit Kate Burns and have a little discussion with her, but might not be able to do that.
They're going to use the Rottweilers on you.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Well, shoot. Let's talk a little bit more about the schools. So right now, of course, September 1 is the traditional start date of school starting in Macedonia. I don't think the government's commission has definitively decided one way or the other if schools will open or if they will be online or will be a combination or certain grades will be at home. What's the latest on that?
Yeah, there was a funny situation today. It turns out that the commission, the secretary, the education minister, which has to come up with the changes to the way education is conducted, they all took vacation, so they're not going to work at the moment. So they're completely unprepared. They're making it up as they go along. There is, as I said, Filipcho, the healthcare minister, is very hawkish, while an Albanian person who is the education minister, he wanted the schools to reopen or at least reopen in areas with lower infection rates, but Filipcho is adamant that they shouldn't. The Committee on Healthcare Experts insists that schools should remain closed. So finally they came up with an idea that we should have the first 3 grades, so children which you cannot leave at home, which need to be cared for by parents or teachers, that they should go to school, but if the families are scared, they can opt out and ask for online education. And everybody above 3rd grade, so 4th graders and above, that would be like about 10 years and above.
Yeah.
They could all just attend online education and maybe go once a week to school and for some testing or maybe not even that.
Right.
But the idea would be to have the teachers at school doing videos, doing Zoom conferences. The teachers, they're all on Instagram, but for some reason they claim they don't know how to operate Zoom. So it's public sector unions, you know how horrible those things get.
Yes.
So they're nowhere near prepared. So latest they've been saying is they might want to try and postpone the whole thing, which is good. I mean, we're long overdue to break up the public education sector and maybe do some vouchers, semi-privatized things, some boost the private sector in this department. So I'm pretty optimistic about the developments. But the public sector is completely collapsing. They have no idea what they're doing.
Well, Of course, on the issue of the teachers' unions and things like that, we have the same issue here. It's because teaching is not about the children; it's about the teachers.
Yeah.
I don't want to belittle there are plenty of fantastic teachers and educators, in Macedonia and America, etc. But the unions themselves exist for a different reason. So, well, let's see. Let's continue down the path of crushing morosity. So this past week we had Eurostandard Bank, which is owned by Tryfon Kostovsky, collapse. So it was actually closed by the authorities, correct?
Yeah, the central bank ordered revoked their license.
Yeah. Now, those with savings are supposedly reimbursed up to 30,000 euros. I said supposedly. But
they're probably going to have to wait for a very long time to get the full amount. Maybe
define
small
very long time.
Increments. I think it took about 20 years for the government to pay back the money the government seized in the old government-owned banks in Yugoslav times.
Wow.
So you get like a small 100 euros a month for your deposit of 30,000 euros, and you get it in 100 euro increments every month. So
incredible. Now, the finance minister, Nina Angelovska, reportedly had a €250,000 in Eurostandard Bank and withdrew it all before the collapse. Now,
that's
sure,
amazing foresight.
Amazing, yes, it's prophetic.
Yeah.
So it's, of course, she's being called out for it, and she's denying everything. What's her excuse?
She said, she's like an IT entrepreneur, so she said, I wanted to invest the money, and I put most of it in a investment fund, and then poor little old me, I lived under. I was paying rent, so I took out the rest and started, bought an apartment, so I stopped paying rent. It's unseemly for a finance minister to rent out an apartment, not have her own place. So this is what her excuse, but obviously the bank was troubled for a very long time. She was given ample warning. The owner, the oligarch Tryfon Kostovsky, says it has been troubled for a year. He even said it should have been closed down or had the license revoked or put under administration a year ago. And I was asking for this, he says, but the central bank wouldn't let me do it. So obviously the finance minister knew, and she took her money out while possibly even delaying the decision for after the elections. There is one decision by the central bank to limit most activities in the bank June 1st, before the elections. It would have badly affected the public mood before the elections. So this was kept as a professional secret, is the title of the document of the memorandum. So it was kept secret from the public until everybody who is a political insider withdraws the money, and then it's just the little people left to holding the bag at the end.
Wow. Well, I'm sure that Vomero will continue talking about this. The people, the little people included that you mentioned, know that this is all a scam, and that what's happened is a scam. Where's Tryfon Kostovsky hiding out these days?
He went public with his son. He said, I've been duped by my manager. But the thing is that, this is a very small bank. He was not a very competent manager of anything. He made his money trading metals at a time when Yugoslavia and Austria's non-aligned, non-NATO members countries, non-Warsaw Pact, of course, were able to trade between the East and West during the Cold War. So, Yugoslavia would buy metals from the Soviet Union and sell them to the US and charge a fee because the US couldn't trade directly with the USSR. So this is their business. This is what they did. And they were political securitist insiders of the Yugoslav. And the Austrian government, he was based in Vienna, and they would engage in this trade. So he made his money in this regard, then came to Macedonia and presented himself as a major businessman, very successful person. Everything he touched was the reverse Midas touch. And he had tried a career in singing, was the mayor of Skopje. But the thing is that his very small bank has a very lucrative contract which he got using his political connections with the post office. So there are hundreds of villages which do not have any proper bank, but they have a post office, and the post office has one booth which says Eurostandard Bank, or maybe not even that, but the postal lady, which government subsidized employee, when you go pay your utility bills or you collect your retirement income or your salary, if you're going through the bank, you use the post office and you use Eurostandard. So they're like 1 or 2% of the total deposits and credits in the country, but they're 25% of all banking transactions.
Wow.
And it's a huge windfall. The money goes to support the post and goes to Trifon's pockets. Now, in 2005, there was a very important push from the Dutch ING Bank, which said, listen, you have this branched out structure throughout the country. It's just a turnkey situation. All we have to do is come in, pay you as much as you want, buy the post office essentially from you, and we just rebrand every post office ING. We take over, but we are a proper, normal European, gigantic bank, and we can actually provide competitive credits. We can supply your economy with whatever you want. It's not how much money we have to invest in Macedonia, it's how much you people in Macedonia can absorb in business ideas or in, just buying mortgages or, buy a second car or whatever. Just let us come in. We take over the post office. We immediately have a nationwide bank, branches everywhere. And, you become a normal European country. Under huge pressure from both DUI, which manages the post office and gets a huge cut out of these transactions. Plus, in Albanian neighborhoods, it's very common that the postal van gets hit by robbers, and every time DUI is in need of some money. It's even a joke. Elections haven't been called until DUI hits a postal van because they need the money for the campaign. So DUI resisted this sale, and Harry Kostov, obviously the owner of Komercijalna Bank, the biggest bank in the country, he didn't want to allow a proper European bank intrude on the market and drive down the interest rates. We used to have double-digit interest rates on mortgages, like 12, 13,
Wow.
15% on a mortgage until 2005, 2006. It was a disaster. And the banking lobby and DUI, they shut down this offer. They chased ING away. Then Gruevski came to 2006. He adopted a law under which any normal-sized bank in Europe can open a branch in Macedonia, no questions asked, just apply to the central bank and automatically they have approval. A number of banks came, like Societe Generale, Sparkasse, an Italian bank, a few Bulgarian banks, and the interest rates got down to a normal, now it's like 4 or 5% for a mortgage, which is normal, more or less. So this is part of the Gruevski boom. He more than doubled the amount of money issued in credits between 2006 and 2008. It was a huge expansion of credits in the country, practically meaning that there were tens of thousands of people with great business ideas and hundreds of thousands of people with need to buy a house, build an apartment, a new car, who couldn't get a proper credit because Harry Kostov in his Komercijalna Bank wanted to keep the market in a stranglehold. And now it's very likely that, the bank with Eurostandard being so distressed that Komercijalna and Harry Kostov just swoop in and pick it up, and that he takes over this very lucrative business with the post office.
Wow. Now, I want to go back to two things you just said. First of all, that you have hundreds of villages that had the Eurostandard Bank in the post office. That's how the folks in a town or a village without a proper bank were able to do transactions. What are they doing now?
Yeah. They're being told they need to switch to a different bank. How that's going to work, nobody knows. I mean, many people are not really accustomed to using even debit cards. So that's going to be a huge problem. Even I started paying my utility bills online just like 6 months ago over the corona. So you can imagine less tech-savvy people. It's going to be a big problem. A quarter of all transactions were going through. We could have been in a situation if Eurostandard Bank collapsed before that Zaev has borrowed enough public money to bribe voters with these tourism vouchers, these microcredits he was giving out, etc. But that he couldn't have physically moved the money to the voters in time, that portion of the bribery which was going legally through the budget, the votes Zaev was buying with this sprinkling around of borrowed money, that he wouldn't be in a position to move it fast enough to the voters before the elections. So the bank was allowed to sputter on until after July 15th, and now it's being chopped up, and it's going to be given to the lowest bidder. It's going to be, and everybody knows it's going to be Harry Kostov.
Wow. Well, I said two things on the Eurostandard Bank and the villages and whatnot, and the thing you mentioned about Dewey controlling the post office. My second point is that explains why my letters that are sent to Macedonia never arrive. I even try to, because I'm assuming that some of the people there know my name, so I use a different name. I use my address.
Seriously?
Yeah, seriously, I've done that before.
Huh.
So,
Well, God.
but and they still don't get there. But and which is why I don't send letters there anymore. I bring them over personally and things like that.
Yeah.
So, but okay, let's jump to another scandal, a scandal that we haven't heard about in quite some time. So, Boki 13. Whatever happened to him and all of the scandals around him and the people that were in his orbit? We haven't heard a bloody thing about that in weeks.
Yeah, the trials were postponed for well after the elections. The judge is making sure they just run through the hearings. They had, I think, one hearing after the elections. But I guess he's now reconsidering his willingness to talk about Zaev's involvement. Obviously, he was banking on Vimmer winning and making a deal, planning to sing and say everything he knows. But he used his lawyer for this. The lawyer would give press conferences, etc. They've been, obviously, once they saw the results, they've quieted down. So the whole thing is being swept under the rug. And, there were tremendous corruption revelations linked to Boki 13 and many other cases like Dan Donchev. Before the elections, it was all timed, obviously, to appear before July 15th. But as it was a low turnout election, there was not enough critical mass, enough people voting to punish Zaev over this. So I think he's gonna... There was even such a humiliating moment. So Pendarovsky was giving his August 2nd Ilinden speech. And, as a supporter of the colored revolution, he's the DSM person, but one who still cares about his public persona, unlike Zaev, who, he can tell any lie in the world, and he considers that he has saturated the people with lies so much that nobody really reacts anymore. Pendarovsky still cares about his own, the way he is perceived, so he he had a few comments in the Ilinden speech that, okay, yeah, we promised justice, we promised we'll do something, fight crime, arrest people, and how can I put this delicately, the putsch on this one. So he said this, and then it was a complete humiliation. It was really unbelievable. The former employees of the Special Prosecutor's Office, led by Lencha Ristovska, who still hasn't been completely disgraced like other people on her staff, they sent out a message to Pendarovsky demanding an apology from him because he tarnished the reputation of the whole of the Special Prosecutor's Office. They insisted that Pendarovsky should have only mentioned Katica Janeva, that it was all her fault, that she was all alone in all the racketeering, extortion, political abuse of the institution, etc. But everybody else was blameless, innocent. They were doing their job very professionally, and that Pendarovsky must apologize. And he practically did. He said, I'm not apologizing to you, but yes, I only meant Katica Janeva, not you guys who worked under her, closely with her, and must have known what's going on inside. They're even, not only were caught, this entire institution, they were caught in racketeering, extortion, political abuse of the institution to impose the name change, to practically do a regime change in Macedonia, a coup in Macedonia, and the institution has been dismantled in disgrace. They're shameless about it. They're even insisting that they did good. There was only one rotten apple in the entire batch, but everybody else was good. This is, they're not even zero self-awareness, which just guarantees that these people live in a bubble with their diplomats and their cocktails and their lefty members of parliament and academics, and they have no idea what they're doing and how they're perceived in the public.
Yeah, it's hubris. It's the height of hubris, is what it is. I don't, and these people we're talking about, whether they're the Macedonians or the internationals, they don't really know, I think, what's coming. I know last week we talked about the kind of the silent majority and when will the Macedonians stand up and speak and whatnot. And actually, this is something I'm thinking about, and I'm kind of talking out loud right now as I think about this, and I'm going to write about this at some point soon. Macedonia is a member of NATO, but what happens when there is, in a NATO country, when there is internal strife to the point of either a civil war or a coup? Of course, Greece and Turkey both joined NATO at the same time in 1952, and both countries have had coups since then as NATO member countries. So that goes to prove, and for the internationals listening, that a NATO country can have a coup d'etat and still be a member of NATO, and it's fine. So just to kind of to say, Macedonia could have a coup d'etat and still be a member of NATO, and it should be fine.
It's going to be beyond a coup d'etat. We would probably, without our national identity, we would probably have a fragmentation inviting two other NATO members into the partition of the country.
Right.
So this is...
Which NATO?
We had two NATO members partition Cyprus, but Cyprus was not a NATO member. Now, this time we would have Bulgaria and Albania invited to intervene in some sort of unrest in Macedonia, Bosnian style, but it's going to be in a NATO member state.
Right.
But maybe before that we have the maritime exchange between two NATO members, Greece and Turkey, and of course whatever is shaped the unrest in the U.S. I mean, you practically have a small-scale civil conflict in the U.S. as it is right now. I mean, ethnically, politically, level of Germany in the 70s, Baden-Meinhof, something like that, with elements of civil and racial war. But after your elections, oh boy,
Well,
that's going to be
yeah.
interesting.
After our elections, look, this is the truth. After our elections, there's going to be riots and violence, no matter who wins, whether it's Biden or
yeah.
Trump. If Trump wins, there's going to be violence because the left and the progressives and others are upset with him. If Biden wins, there's going to be violence because the left and the progressives want Biden to implement their vision of a quote-unquote totally transformed America, which is what, as I remind you, Barack Obama said 5 days before he was elected in 2008. He said, we're 5 days away from fundamentally transforming America, when, in fact, America did not need to be fundamentally transformed. And yet he was the furthest left president we've ever had. And if Biden is elected with his vice president, Kamala Harris, who will become president after he drops dead sometime in his first 4 years, this is going to be the furthest left the country's ever gone. And the people are going to, they're going to say, we're mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore. And they are going, there could very well be another civil war here. I firmly believe that. And if the United States goes, I guarantee you the rest of the world will go down too.
Yeah, of course.
On that note,
at least we will get, at least under our arrangement, we would get an Albanian prime minister for 1 year of the 4-year terms. In your case, you will probably get Kamala Harris for 3 years of the 4-year term. The way that the dementia-crats are going.
Oh, all right.
Oh my
Enough
God.
negativity. I think last week I said that I had a farmer's pick. I did. It was Macedonia from above, a little new YouTube channel created by Macedonians that make good use of drones to show some of the beautiful places of Macedonia. Last week it was Trasvanche. This week I want to introduce the video that they've put together, Monastery of St. John the Baptist, the Bigorski. It's just a wonderful drone shots and footage and music combined to show one of the, just really impressive monasteries. And Macedonia has many beautiful and impressive monasteries, but this one just really stands out, Bigorski Monastery. So that's going to be my farmer's pick, and I see that they've put a couple more videos up. So I think we're going to have farmer's picks here for the next several weeks.
Excellent. I'm not editing anything into the video. I get banned by YouTube all the time for copyright violations.
Yeah, naturally.
I'm gonna stop doing that. But yeah, we'll have the link in the show notes.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. All right. It's a Sunday here. It's approaching noon. I actually have work today. We are just slammed. So I've got a conference call coming up here. But this has been a good podcast, even though again too much crushing morosity. But we ended on a good note with Bogorski Monastery.
Yeah, well, as Damegrev said, better a horrible end than horror with no end. So it's.
Oh, I like that.
That's our.
I forgot.
Yeah, that's our optimistic take of the week.
All right, good podcast. Good talking to you, Cvetin.
You too, Betty. Take care.